Welcome to Nothing But the Facts. Hi everyone, welcome to Amit-Hub Nothing But the Facts episode 9. This episode is going to basically talk about how, in my opinion, how criminally underrated Malaysian food is as a cuisine overall. Just to start, if you don't really know what Malaysian food is, that's probably not your issue or your fault. It's often just combined in the Western world, especially with Southeast Asian dishes and Thai food, and even served in Thai restaurants under that name, largely because it's much easier to market and present to the Western public. Yes, there are a few restaurants that do sort of position themselves or market themselves as Malaysian, but it's not as common, partly because, just as many of you guys are wondering, nobody really knows sometimes where the country is, what sort of their food history is, and what exactly the ingredients are being used. Now, in terms of dishes that you might have had but you don't know, there's one called Penang curry, which is essentially a type of curry in Thai cuisine now that has less of a coconut base and much more of a spice base and a more complex assortment of flavors. This comes from the city, actually, of Penang in Malaysia, which is really famous for its style of cooking that comes all the way from the trade routes that used to run through Malaysia way back during Dutch colonial rule, British rule, and made Malaysia a powerhouse in the spice route and spice trade back in that time. If you want other examples, you may have had drunken noodles or pad ki mao, as it's often called at Thai restaurants. But there's actually a very analogous dish in Malaysian cooking called char kway teow. This is also had in Singapore, if you've ever been. This dish is essentially a version of that with much less of a focus on basil and much more smokiness. And in my opinion, it adds another level of richness and just complexity to the dish as well. And when you have it, it just focuses more on the texture of the noodle that just overall makes the overall dish much more interesting and, I don't know, just much more enjoyable to me. It's my favorite dish in the world, so I really hope you give it a try. Not many places serve it because it's extremely hard to make. You need a wok that can have extremely high heat, not cooked for too long, and the ingredients you need are much rarer in these parts of the world than obviously Southeast Asia. While I'm sure there are many other dishes that you are probably not familiar with, I also wanted to introduce two others. One you may have had, one you might not have had. So satay, or satay as people say, is actually a Malaysian Indonesian dish as well. That pretty much is just meat on a skewer, much like a kebab. But the way it's made in Malaysia and Indonesia as well is much more subtle. There's an emphasis on making the meat even more tender, using a glazing sort of sauce that makes it sometimes a little mustardy actually, but also just a little more soft on the palate when you have it. So if you ever have an opportunity to have that, as well with genuine peanut sauce, not a peanut butter base, but actually one that is made of ground peanuts and spices all mashed up, it makes the dish significantly better. So if you have an opportunity to have that, or if you've had it before in the past, it comes from that part of the world as well. And the one you might not know, but it's very, very famous in Malaysia and that region, is called nasi lemak. It's a coconut rice dish. Nasi means rice in Malay. And it has an assortment of sides, often a main protein like a chicken or a fried fish, with eggs, with vegetables, and it's a very, very classic, simple, beautiful dish that you can enjoy. Those are the main ones I would really talk about. If you ever end up traveling to Malaysia or Singapore or even Indonesia again, I add Indonesia because Indonesia and Malaysia have an interesting history. They speak a very similar language. Some words are a little different, but overall they're quite comparable. So, as I was saying, if you ever go there, you might have a noodle soup which is known as a laksa. And there are many types of laksas, but it's like a tangy, sour, sometimes spicy, sometimes salty sort of noodle soup base that is probably one of the best versions of that sort of food you'll ever have. Imagine having like a tom yum noodle soup or even like a pho with much more going on within the broth and the way in which that broth is made. Oftentimes we see coconut used as a base, but it can also be just more of a red chili oil base or seafood broth, and I really, really highly recommend that to you if you ever have it. So I know this is probably quite new to many people, so I would encourage you to research and see what other foods you may like. I can also definitely post a few links to these sorts of foods in the description. But yeah, please do try it out. I think it's as I said, criminally underrated food. Oh, that's a lot of water. Yeah, just let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.